Anatomy and Physiology. An Introduction to the World of Human Anatomy and Physiology. Anatomy. Anatomy is a structure in the relationship among structures. There are several types of anatomy: gross anatomy, systemic anatomy, regional anatomy, developmental anatomy, embryology, pathological anatomy, histology, and cytology. Gross anatomy. Gross anatomy deals with structures that can be studied without a microscope, at the macroscopic level. Gross anatomy is focused upon obtaining information about organs and organ systems. Dissection is amongst the most common ways of acquiring useful knowledge on gross anatomy. An example of gross anatomy is studying the cardiovascular system with a large perspective in mind, studying the heart, superior vena cava, pulmonary artery, and inferior vena cava, for example. Systemic anatomy. Systemic anatomy covers specific systems of the body, such as the nervous system. Systemic anatomy covers all the aspects of a specific system that keep them going. An example of systemic anatomy is studying the nervous system. When one is covering the systemic anatomy of the nervous system, one would study the brain and spinal cord of the central nervous system and nerves of the peripheral nervous system. Regional anatomy. Regional anatomy is study of anatomy focusing on the different regions of the body and the structures of it. Regional anatomy deals with the exterior parts of the body. An example of regional anatomy would be to study the foot area and the structures of it, being the toes and the heel. Developmental anatomy. Developmental anatomy is the study of development from fertilization to maturity. Developmental anatomy plays a pivotal role in the maturation of organs and the structures of the body. Embryology. Embryology is generally restricted to the study of development from the fertilized egg to the end of the 8th week in the uterus. Embryology and developmental anatomy are very similar, but the difference is that embryology is specifically from fertilization to the 8th week, and developmental anatomy is throughout maturation. Pathological anatomy. Pathological anatomy is a study of structural change caused by disease. Disease is a disorder of structural function in a human, especially one that produces specific signs or symptoms that affect a specific location. An example of pathological anatomy would be studying a case of peripheral artery disease, or PAD. PAD is when one's arteries are clogged and oxygen-rich blood-carrying nutrients are unable to reach certain locations. Histology. Histology is the microscopic study of the structure of tissues. Tissue is a cellular organizational level intermediate between cells and a complete organism. Cytology. Cytology is the study of cells. Cytology deals with structure and function of cells. One thing to remember about cells is that they make up tissues. They are the basis of all life in the human system.